I'm an 18-year-old guy, a student living on my own. I want to share a story that happened to me this summer. Just recalling it sends shivers down my spine. It happened in the middle of July, during a sweltering heat wave. Unlike the hot daytime, the evenings were much cooler. I was chatting with a friend on social media while browsing YouTube videos. Beside me were a few freshly made sandwiches, and my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my friend. On my screen was a video from my favorite blogger. Everything was perfect, except for one thing. I didn't have a cup of hot tea. It wasn't a big deal, though. I could fix that quickly. Letting my friend know I'd be gone for a few minutes, I headed to the kitchen to boil some water. While waiting for the kettle to boil, I gazed out the window. The night was dark, and the streets were eerily empty. Soon, the kettle whistled, signaling the water was ready. I brewed my tea, added a few sugar cubes, and placed the cup on the windowsill to cool. I didn't feel like going back to my stuffy room, so I decided to enjoy the view of the silent Moscow streets while my tea cooled. A few minutes passed, and I noticed a tall man walking below. He must have been about 2 meters tall, bald, and wearing a white shirt stained with red paint around the collar. He also had a large old belt and wide trousers. The man moved slowly, humming an odd tune. Then he stopped and stared into a ground floor window. For context, I live on the second floor. A chill ran through me. Something about him was just off. Why would anyone stand outside at night staring into strangers' windows? I quickly grabbed my tea, which hadn't cooled much yet, and hurried back to my room. My phone had over 20 new messages from my friend, so I told him about the strange man I'd seen. Predictably, he didn't believe me, and even joked about taking a picture of the man. I refused, claiming the man was already gone. Truthfully, I didn't want to see him again. The topic faded as we moved on to discuss the news of the day. The night deepened, and the clock showed 1:42 a.m. My friend told me he was heading to bed since he had to get up early for work. Left alone, I felt a bit bored, so I decided to watch more videos on YouTube. Midway through a 15-minute video, I got a message from my friend. "Dude, you won't believe what just happened." I turned on the water to fill the tub and sat in the kitchen since it was hot. I opened the window and stared outside. Suddenly, I saw this guy. At first, he seemed normal, but something was off about him. He was humming a song and stopped outside my building, staring at the ground floor windows. I thought, maybe he's waiting for someone. But then, he looked directly at me, straight into my eyes. He stopped humming, and this creepy grin spread across his face. I swear, I nearly screamed. Then, he started yelling. But it wasn't a normal yell. It was inhuman, terrifying. His face, it seemed to change. It was like it turned black, or maybe I imagined it. I turned away and went to check the bathtub. It was overflowing. When I came back to the kitchen, he was gone. Man, I swear, it felt so real, but maybe I just imagined it. Crazy, right? He laughed it off, saying it was probably nothing. We joked about it for a while, then he said he was going to check the door since someone was knocking. I didn't hear from him after that. I assumed it was his neighbors or something and didn't think much of it. The next morning, I planned to visit my friend, who lives across the street. Then I remembered he had gone to check on a job opportunity and likely wasn't home. He didn't show up online all day, which worried me a little, but I told myself he was probably busy or hanging out with someone. By late evening, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. At almost midnight, I went to the kitchen for a drink. While sipping water and looking out the window, I saw him again. The same tall man in the same clothes, walking the same way, humming the same tune. He stopped at the same spot near my building and looked into the ground floor windows. But then, he looked up at me, directly at me. His grin returned, wider and more twisted than before. His mouth stretched unnaturally, and he let out that horrific, guttural scream. His face turned pitch black, and his skin sagged grotesquely. Terrified, I dropped my glass and ran back to my room. I couldn't stop shaking. Minutes felt like hours as I sat in fear. Then someone started banging on my door. It was loud, relentless, as if they were trying to break it down. I froze, unable to move or make a sound. The banging continued for what felt like an eternity before it stopped. I must have passed out because I woke up the next day, not remembering anything after that. I convinced myself it was all in my head. But then, I heard the news. My friend was dead. He was found hanging in his kitchen. The details were too horrific to believe. Even now, I can't explain what happened that night. But every time I think about it, I feel that man's gaze, his twisted grin, and his inhuman scream.